Thousand Tales presents Genetic Actor by Godfrey. Read by Matthew Carson. I was built to be beautiful. Yes, I'm a man, but beautiful is the correct term. I was grown, developed, my body exactly proportioned, my teeth made perfectly straight, my body hair non-existent, my fingers the exact proportion considered desirable, even my eyes are spread apart at the exact ratio for ideal beauty. I was raised to be an actor. I have recorded in my mind over 750 films of all types, as well as the commentary, analyses, and reviews of each. I can reel off the names of each cast member of each film and can imitate each leading man's role perfectly. I am to play the dashing hero. I have studied fencing, martial arts, the etiquettes on killing a man. Romantic lead? I know every romantic film made of any worth in the last decade, any more, and my mind would overflow with useless information. I am the product of an industry obsessed with the next great thing. But I am hardly the only product. If a villain is needed, the studios have access to the best. Some of my co-stars have broken teeth. Some have scars etched perfectly along their skin. One gentleman has a crooked back, designed with the utmost skill, while another had his genitals removed. It doesn't come up much in films, though. Female lead? We have a selection. Some are the slender model. Others are larger. Some have been programmed like myself with a history of film, with each cliché, while others are given a more flexible skill set. It all depends upon the director anyway. My problems began during the filming of Bridges of Mayon. It was my last official film as lead, though I'd probably made better work. I was playing the lead as usual, and the film involved a major battle between myself and my antagonist. At one point, upon the eponymous wooden structure suspended over a jungle, my rival cut my face. It was a minor injury, but the director said cut and had me looked at by a doctor. Like I said, it was a minor injury, but the director couldn't wait for my face to heal, so he had a replacement brought in myself. So I sat out my own film while a copy of myself went on to play the lead. Copies were not unusual. I myself am a copy of some perfect human form coalesced and whittled down to the bare essentials of perfection. But it bothered me being replaced, even if it was by myself. My rival apologized profusely, but the damage was done, and it was hardly his fault. It was mine, and that's where the trouble began. I hadn't blocked his strike. In the scene when we were fighting, I had been distracted, and he had cut me by surprise. And that shouldn't have happened. As I said, I am perfection, perfectly beautiful, perfectly aware of my role. In countless films, I have never needed a retake or made a mistake. So I had to go home, go back to the factory for a while. We exist. Actors such as myself do one part to marketability and two parts to control. By the modern age, the idea of a random human being selected to play a role as important as ours had become passe. It was hardly surprising. Most were ill-equipped to deal with celebrity. When one factored in all the narcotics, sex scandals, and egos of the average individual thrust into the role of unlimited power, it staggered me to imagine how many actually survived. But in the modern age, our roles were defined, our psychological natures programmed, our lives mapped as perfectly as silk and just as smoothly. We exist to fulfill our roles, play our parts, and then eventually we will retire to be replaced by individuals exactly like ourselves. But I had been injured, and this worried me. So, with the production all set, my replacement prepared, I went home to the factory to see what, if anything, was wrong with me. The factory was a large cube located in the middle of the city. Originally, it had occupied many blocks, but over the decades, it had been streamlined and now was a single building, vague and nondescript. Home. "Good evening, sir," the night watchman said as I entered the building. I smiled, my teeth utterly perfect, explained myself, and the doors opened and I walked down the brightly lit corridors to where I'd been conceived. "Ah, there you are," my creator greeted me as I entered them. "Room." "Yes." I smiled again and sat in the center of the white bare room. As my creator with his large belly, owl-speckled glasses, and balding head bent over me to look at the small cut along my face. Bad damage," he said in irritation. "Shouldn't have happened." It was as much a question as a statement, I knew. "No," I said. He turned to the screen on the far wall and observed the fight scene. And there I was, tall and handsome, and my opponent a subtle shade of ugliness specially designed to make the audience uneasy to even look at him. Then the parry and thrust, knives glinting in the sun, and I noticed my concentration lagged, and he cut me, and I could see the horror on his face, and I could see the blank expression on my own. "Mom, strange." Again, as much a question as a statement. He left the room. I sat on the chair, black and smooth and soft, and closed my eyes a moment. The cut itself was nothing. But the mistake, had I been human, I suspect I would have found the mistake unsettling. As it was, I wondered if I was going to die. It was not an idle thought. Of course they could kill me, dismantle me. It wasn't as if I was the first of my line. And mistakes did happen. Sometimes an actor slipped up, and this cost them, but death seemed no more tragic than life. Not when one has played so many roles, lived so many lives, and experienced so many death scenes. After a time, the reality of any situation seems to lose all meaning to us. He returned, talked it over with the higher-ups. "I think you need a vacation." "Vacation?" "Yes, not the lead. There's a horror movie that could use a few monsters. Why don't we fix you up in that? Play a role that isn't as taxing, and after a few months get you back to your usual routine? Is there anything especially wrong with me?" I ask, attempting to feign interest, though some concern is almost needling at my mind. "Well, you are getting older. You're what, 5 now?" Now, ordinarily we don't dispose of actors just for getting old. I mean, we still have a few veterans who are 6 and even 7. But I think you need a short rest from your usual role. Stretch out a bit. Yes, a 6-month vacation might do you good. And that was that. My skin is mottled into shades of corpse flesh, part of my eye made blood red, and my teeth shortened. Most of this was mere special effects, though my teeth would have to be replaced afterward. My role was small, which hardly concerned me. I was playing a monstrous undead creature, as well as several others. Some, most noticeably the lead zombie, had no special effects of any kind. She was a veteran. Her breasts had been removed, small portions of her skin cut off, and the pallor of her skin was preternaturally yellow. Her body was specially designed with an immune system, which allowed her to function, even if half the skin on her body was removed, which sometimes it was. Also, her pain receptors didn't work, meaning she felt no discomfort. I think I almost envied her. She kept her role. The scene was quite different from Bridge of Mayon, a radioactive wasteland, a burnt-out ember of a city, and our role was to catch and kill various moderately attractive extras. I myself ran down and killed 2 of them, though neither were sentient. They were just flesh with no higher function than run. I tracked one of them down, my heart pounding in my chest, and dragged her to the ground, and with the others I ripped out her throat. Sadly, we had to do the take again, hence my killing 2 of them. Every day I checked the schedule on Bridges of Mayon. My replacement was doing well, of course, as he was, being identical to myself. This wasn't surprising. As for myself, I found more and more of my colleagues either quitting the picture or dying out. There wasn't any great surprise there either. Some were veterans and a few opted to die on set. They figured they weren't going to get any more work, and a violent death scene would be memorable. And was. Some felt the film was lacking in technique, and so they left for other pictures, only to be replaced by their own copies the next day. As for myself, I enjoyed the mindlessness of it, the certainty of my role here, for after all, there are truly no small roles, merely small actors. The veteran, the woman I knew, seemed like one of the few who still had a future. Despite her role as an undead thing, she seemed secure that there would always be another role, another job. But then one day during a scene, the protagonist accidentally cut her, badly. Now, this wouldn't have affected anything except the cut severed a few nerves in her mouth. I was never sure if the injury was her fault or the fault of the protagonist, considering they were fighting in near total darkness, the camera leaving enough illumination to provide the audience with glimpses of the terror and horror of the last human survivor's situation. Anyway, she had to go get repaired. So another one had to be brought in, a copy, but she didn't seem as confident as her previous self. And my role being pretty much over, I decided to check on the veteran, see how she was. I still remember the black corridors of the final scene, though. If nothing else, the ending was unforgettable. I went to the factory to check on her, but when I arrived, I discovered a shock. Apparently, she too had had enough. Her iron will, her skills, they had atrophied a bit, and our creator had decided she too needed a vacation. As the lead romantic interest in a film my copy was starring in. So as I arrived, I saw a woman, slender, tall, well-endowed, who smiled at my yellow skin, shortened teeth, blackened gums, and I had just enough presence of mind to realize it was her, and she was going to play alongside a copy of myself in another film. "Ah, you're back." He smiled at me as I entered the room. "Has 6 months passed?" I nodded, then asked about whether I was going back to my work or not. "Well, I'm sorry to say no, you're not." "Why not?" "We did some tests. A rare condition, I'm afraid. Literally 1 in a billion." I sat at the black chair and looked up at him. "How long?" "Well, some last for a few years." "Sorry." He said the word as casually as he could, or tried. But beneath it, he seemed so terribly embarrassed that one of his creations was flawed, and he was to blame. "What should I do?" "Well, ever tried being a member of the audience?" he asked, and I shook my head no. And that's when my life began. Over the last 6 months, I've attended many films, seen myself, or rather my copy on screen, next to the veteran. Of course, we don't really have names. Most of the audiences watching are small, barely more than 50 people, and in fact the industry has been slowing down. A few times we've given them everything, even our lives, to make films no one is going to see or care about when they're done. I have talked to those audiences who can't seem to understand there is more to us than shown upon the screen. We are more. Though perhaps they're right. I think sometimes, perhaps we don't even exist unless we're being watched. And I can't imagine how angry, loving, hurtful, raw, or quiet I sound up there, as if feeling everything. I wonder sometimes if I hadn't been flawed, if I'd still be up there, living role after role, taking them up to put them down again. But I find the only truth comes in the dark, far from the culture of the instant and forgettable, when no one can see you except yourself, and you're alone. I think maybe that's why they built us. Most people would rather face an image on a screen, even if everything is false, than be alone with oneself. I don't think we're very good company. The end.